So, reserving the right to be wrong, comedy of errors, Shakespearean joke there for anyone who spots it. You have a mission during this presentation. There are 7 mistakes. Spot them, count them. There will be a test at the end. There are no prizes for the winner, but look for the 7 mistakes. Okay, so we have a quote. No amount of experimentation can ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong, as Isaac Newton famously said. And the point here is, while we're working in security, while it's a technical area, there still aren't any right answers. You cannot be certain that what you say now will still apply 10 minutes from now, 6 months, whatever it might be, or even that it's accurate now. You have to be ready to be proven wrong by experiment, by failures, by all sorts of other things. If you can't accept that, you are going to have massive, massive problems. And it's not necessarily going to be career problems, it's going to be dealing with reality. So it's going to be issues around stress, it's going to be issues with relationships, all sorts of things will come out of that. You have to accept a single experiment can prove you wrong. As Isaac Newton said. Nice picture of him there. And I'm going to now give you all a question. Am I secure enough? Can someone tell me the right answer to this? Is that no, you can't tell me the right answer, or no, I'm not secure enough? It does depend on my risk appetite, but if I say it's within risk appetite, then am I secure enough? Or outside it, am I then not secure enough? Yeah. There is no definite answer. More importantly, am I secure enough to admit I might be wrong? I told you this was a security talk. Another quote, because I like quotes. I don't like perfection, and this is true, I hate perfection. It's dangerous because there's nothing after it. There is no room to grow once you're right, once you've mastered something. You have to be able to be wrong, to change your views and accept new information. And this is the professional argument for why you need to be able to. It's because otherwise you are going to be stuck at that point in your career, in your life forevermore, because there is nothing better out there. There is no way to grow or change without starting from a position where you're wrong about something. And you can see the nice picture of Albert Einstein, who famously gave that quote. So, why do this whole thing of reserving the right to be wrong? Why say to people, yes, I think this is the answer, but I could be wrong? Why do that every time? Because it sounds like you're just hedging your bets. Well, we have on one side security. You have accountability. If you can admit you're wrong, you can be held accountable for things. Someone who can't admit they're wrong can't be. And we all know that accountability, ownership, is absolutely vital to security. If you haven't got ownership, if you haven't got direct ownership of assets, of risks, of everything else, you do not have a secure organisation at all. There's growth. If you can't admit you're wrong, as we've said, you can't grow, you can't develop, you can't change. You have to be open to making mistakes and accepting them and learning from them, even if it's painful. Communication. If you're always right, what's the point of anyone talking to you? Because you're just going to be right. They can just ask you a question and walk away. There is no conversation, there is no negotiation, there is no exchange of information. I mean, information theory is one of my favourite hobbies, and it's all about that exchange of information. It's not about someone being right. And acceptance. If you accept that you can be wrong about things, life gets a lot less stressful. I guarantee you. When you're trying to be right all the time, when you have to be right all the time, it is painful. Really, really painful. I speak from experience here. Years of experience before I learned that lesson. And on the other side, we have insecurity. So, what do we get under insecurity? Well, we've got denial. We've got people saying, no, there's no way I can be wrong. No, I don't own that system because it's got problems and I don't want to deal with them, so it's not mine. We have stagnation. That's the, I have reached perfection, there is nothing more I need to do. Yes, I got my CEH certificate. I am now a master of pen testing and there is nothing more for me to learn. Conflict instead of communication, because you've got two people who think they're right. It's only going to end one way. That's with both of them dead. And stress. Again, guaranteed. If you're trying to be right all the time, if you hold yourself to this impossible perfect standard, then you are going to be stressed constantly. You may have heard about imposter syndrome. There's quite a lot of talk about it. You know what imposter syndrome really is? It's holding yourself to a standard of perfection. That's all it is. It is holding yourself to a higher standard than can possibly exist. If instead you're saying, oh, I can be wrong, and it's fine if I am, suddenly it all goes away. So, how to do it? We have 5 stages. First one, self-reflection. You have to spend time considering how you feel about things, why you don't want to be wrong. Because even though you can say to yourself, yes, it's fine, yes, it's okay, no one likes being corrected. Absolutely no one likes it. It's built into us as humans that we do want to be right. And it takes a lot of work continuously to say, it's all right if I'm not right. And always, every time you feel like you're being definite about something, consider that you could be wrong. You could be making a mistake. It is always an option. I mean, everyone here has got to be a fan of Mythbusters, yeah? Failure is always an option. Always, no matter how right you think you are. Allow for failure. You know what happens when companies don't allow for failure? They don't do a business continuity plan, and then they go bankrupt. And try to see mistakes as a way to develop and grow, not as something to be ashamed of. Admit to them, own them, grow and learn from them. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a brilliant way to improve yourself, to improve everything around you. Okay, and murder your ego. It's not about you. If someone disagrees with you, if someone proves you wrong, if someone screams at you for hours because you made some tiny mistake, it's not about you. The problem's with them if they're screaming at you, and if it's a more rational, more reasonable discussion over something you did wrong, it's because it was a mistake. Everyone makes them. It's not personal. It's really not. Okay. Next question. How many mistakes did you spot? So we've got 4, 3, okay. Mistake 1, that was Albert Einstein, not Isaac Newton. Mistake 2, that's Leonardo da Vinci, not Isaac Newton. You may spot a pattern with these. That's Mark Twain, not Einstein. They look weirdly alike. It's disturbing. And that was Albert Elbaz. Again, not Einstein. In case you don't know who Albert Elbaz is, I didn't until a few weeks ago when I was researching this. He was a fashion designer. So, fashion gets it. And, yeah, it's denial, not denial. It is more than a river in Egypt, to do the old joke. 3 is not equal to 5. I said there were 3 things. There were 5. Who's got the 7th mistake? There were 6 mistakes, not 7. Except, I just love a paradox. Right. Now I'm also going to say another thing to remember, and this one is really important. This is more uplifting than it looks. I promise you. No one cares. No one cares if you've made a mistake. No one cares if you did something wrong. No one cares if you dropped the mic in the middle of your talk, or knocked the laptop off the stand, or spilt cola in some expensive... Well, okay, Cooper might care. But no one cares about these things. Beyond the immediate consequences, no one remembers them except you. And this is down to a lovely phenomena called the spotlight effect. Some of you may have heard of it. You can also call it, and my preferred name is main character syndrome. We are all the main character of our own story. We've all got this wonderful narration running. Most of us have this narration running in our head telling us what's going on all the time. But even when people don't, when they're, I forget the terminology, but when they haven't got that inner voice, we're still the main character. We've only got one perspective to look out of, and everyone must be looking at us because we're all that's real. Everyone's judging us. They're looking at me. I mean, admittedly, you are all looking at me and judging me because I'm on stage, but that's different. And once I'm gone, you'll forget everything. But it's not as important to everyone else as it is to you. Genuinely. If you make a mistake, no one is going to remember for long. And no one is going to care as much as you do. So the fact that no one cares, take it as a good thing. You are much more worried about what you're doing than everyone else is. They are worried about what they're doing. Right. So, any questions?
Where do you get the inspiration for this idea?
I've been teaching with a training camp called Caps Lock since it was founded 3-4 years ago. And I found that every time I was starting a lecture, I was saying there are no right answers, reserve the right to be wrong, and all of these sorts of things, because these were people coming into security and cybersecurity who were understandably worried that they didn't know enough, that they wouldn't get it right, and they were pursuing the right answer to a lot of things where they didn't exist. So it came from that, and it came from finally getting the fact that after 10 years, I sort of implicitly learned this. And then a few years later, with that training and with having to make it explicit to other people, I started to understand it a lot better myself. And then I started digging into it and the psychology and spotlight effect and all of the other pieces that surround it. And I think, honestly, it's just an important message. I've got a whole other demotivational speech about how sometimes you should just quit and give up.
Where will you find that?
That one I'm still writing, but I've got it. I can submit that for next year. You can do a demotivational track. Anyone else? Oh. Yes. It's a tough one, and there's various ways I've seen it done. Some of them is just slammed down from the top with a massive sledgehammer of, no, you do own this. It's not a pleasant way to do it. It does work, but it causes problems later on. The other one is to point out to people or to get them to understand that you own the system because it's important to you. You don't want me messing with your system, and if you own it, you can stop me doing that. So accountability goes along with ownership.
Yeah, so in my situation at the moment, they have to own the system, but they don't understand or appreciate that they own the security of that system.
It's a common problem, and most likely it's because they don't understand what security is of that system, that you're not just coming in with governance rules and ISO or SOC 2 or whatever it might be and dropping it on them. So I normally go with storytelling and threat modeling work. So getting them to sit down and do threat modeling and really think through what are the threats that apply to that system and what can they do about them, because that makes it real. Or tabletop exercises are another one. again, it makes it real, particularly if you stick the nice big ransomware slide up there and say, right, because this hasn't been done, you now need to deal with this. So it's ways to engage them, and it's gimmicks and it's trickery, but equally it's a way to bring them along that journey. The smallest talk I've given had an audience of 2. So that helped me with sort of exposure therapy. But no, the thing is, if people are listening, they care. They might not change their behaviour as a result, which is ultimately what you are aiming for with any talk or any presentation. But if they are listening, they care at least enough to turn up. And most likely that's because they care about you as a person, if nothing else. Ultimately, it's just deciding what is it you want to get from the talk. Is it to change people's minds, to get them to think differently, to behave differently? Or is it something for you to raise your profile? Either's fine. Ultimately, it is just a case of you have to accept that you will never be as important to everyone else as you are to yourself, and they will never be as important to anyone else as they are to themselves. It's not that they don't care at all. It's just that they don't care as much as you do, unless you can convince them to. Which doesn't answer your question at all, I know. My best answer is, remember that you are doing the talk for a purpose. It doesn't matter whether that purpose succeeds. It's fine to be wrong. It's fine to fail. You're allowed. You're allowed to just try stuff and not have it work.
I'm quite new to the industry. I have been teaching, and there's a lot of caring teachers. And there's this amazing community in the cyber world, the most healthy people you can imagine I've ever witnessed. But I do find the higher level up, with more people, with more letters after their name, there seems to be like a really big ego problem. Is that something that naturally develops, or is there just, is that? Because I don't want to be like that, but is there going to be a certain type of person that will attract?
Okay, so if you look at my LinkedIn, for example, you will see there are no letters after my name on LinkedIn. If you go and look at the license and certifications way at the bottom, you will see I could do the full alphabet soup if I wanted to. The issue with people putting all of the letters after their name, not just one or two, some post-nominals are fine and tasteful in the right context. But when you just start slapping everything in there, it does show a certain personality, and I may get flack for this, but it does show, I believe, a level of insecurity and relying on external validation for what you're doing instead of being willing to say, yeah, I'm all right as I am. This does not apply if you're doing something like filling in a CV or arguing with a chartered engineer where you need to bring credentials into it. There are times it's appropriate, but when it's just that long list to impress everyone, it's not very impressive. This is pretty universal. I've yet to find anywhere this doesn't apply. A lot of the mental health sector, a lot of this is taken from that. Not the self-help positivity side, but the genuinely helpful, it's not that bad side of things. So, as you'd expect, there's more of a handle on it there. But generally speaking, no. There are sectors where you do have support available and they handle it better. We don't have that. Generally, we don't have that. There are companies who provide it for their own staff, but people very rarely take it up, even though they should. The state of mental health in this country is not great in terms of care available, so it's not handled well there. So the answer is, I don't think there's any sector who've really got it. Thank you.